Gender-based violence is a cankerworm eating up the society. But the big question is, what are the root causes of gender-based violence? They say it's a pervasive issue in Nigeria and specifically the Southeast region. The prevalence is becoming something that people need to wake up and put a stop to. But how do we stop gender-based violence in our families, in our society, and in our country? This is the Eastern Eye. I am Alex Ogbodo. The Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. Joining me tonight on the Eastern Eye is Barrister Nenna Anozie. She is a legal practitioner and gender rights advocate. She is the coordinator Wabma Media Development Foundation for Community Mobilization. Tonight, she's joined by Reverend Father Benjamin Achi, Director of Media and Communications, Godfrey Okoye University. He's also the station manager, Go Uni Radio 106.9 FM, the heartbeat of dialogue. Thank you so much for joining us on the Eastern Eye tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So quite naturally, I'll start the questions from the lady. Barrister Nenna Anozie. One will be wondering, what are the common forms of gender-based violence, especially within the traditional Igbo setting? We are talking about gender-based violence. Some people don't even know what it is. In what ways are we going to easily identify them among us?
Okay, thank you so much, Alex, and our viewer out there. I would like to start, just like you said, some people, when we talk about this sexual and gender-based violence, you often hear people say, what are they even talking about? We are talking about any harmful practices meted against anybody by reason of the person's gender. It could happen to a man, it could happen to a woman, but it's mostly, women and girls are mostly the vulnerable ones when you talk about issues of sexual and gender-based violence. And it can take the form of physical violence, where you have to hit somebody, beat somebody. It could take the position of emotional violence, where you use abusive words, coercion, threats, intimidation, harassment. It could also take the form of sexual abuse, where you rape people, you rape girls or women, you defile children, sexual harassment in schools, in workplaces, sex for grade, and all of this. These are all what we are looking at today as sexual and gender-based violence. It could even be in form of economic abuse, where women are denied access to inheritance, to good pay, or work pay. I've had cases where a woman got a lecturing job. This one is even someone very close to me. She got a lecturing job and the husband said, no, you can't do that job because you have to be going from Enugu to Abakiliki. I don't want that. So you just have to go and learn sewing. And this girl actually started learning how to sew. And I was like, and it was not as if this man was bringing enough money to the house. So some people will deny their wives even access to any kind of employment. Just stay at home, do the house chores, take care of my children, and yet you're not even providing sufficiently enough to take care of them. So these are all forms of gender-based violence we'll be looking at as the program proceeds.
All right, thank you. Reverend Father Benjamin Achi, taking from what she has said, would you want to add anything in terms of the immediate manifestations of sexual and gender-based violence?
Oh, well, I think Barrister did justice to the definition she gave, a very detailed one. The only thing I want to add is the one we tend to forget sometimes, and that is, verbal abuse. Gender-based violence may in some cases not be physical, may be verbal. Yes, I've known of cases where someone was entertaining suicidal thoughts because of what the spouse said to her, And she kept saying that, look, well, he has never lifted a finger on me, but the kind of things he says to me on a daily, it's better that he even gave me a slap or or hit me and didn't say anything. So, I mean, the verbal abuse is another form of terrible gender-based violence that most often we don't even talk about. So, I mean, like I said, she gave quite some good details, but I just wanted to add that because sometimes we tend to forget.
I mean, it's very, very important that you had to slide that in, because words are powerful.
Yes.
All right. So, but to you now specifically, do you think that Igbo culture traditionally recognized gender-based violence as a concept? Do you think that they actually have that understanding that it is an issue that needs to be discussed or given attention?
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a very pointed question you've asked. That is actually where we have a problem. You know, one can only be committed to a cause when you are convinced there is a problem in the first place. You know, ours is a very patriarchal society, you know, where a good number of people, an appreciable percentage of the people, even when they don't say it, believe that the man is just there, up there at the head, and then the woman is a subordinate, a second-class citizen, so to speak. You know, so when you talk about gender equality, many people, it doesn't sit well with a number of people, you know. So, and that's where the problem is. So they don't really understand that when you say it, especially in a traditional Igbo setting, some people tend to interrogate that. They don't understand when you talk about what we consider gender-based violence, they don't see any violence in it. They believe that, I once saw a footage just very recently, as recently as yesterday, a young man, and I shared it, those who follow me on social, so I shared it because I couldn't contain it. A young man saying, well, I learned from my father that the woman doesn't have a say in the house. She's just there, just like every other pen I've got. I tell her to stand, she stands. I tell her to sit, she sits. She has no opinion, and she dare not interrogate me or question me on anything. And he was saying it with every air of confidence. You could see how, well, convinced he felt about what he was saying. So I think the problem we have is cultural, and that's what makes it very deep. You know, I mean, it's deeper than we think because those who are even supposed to be in the vanguard in the fight against gender-based violence are not even seeing anything wrong in what we are quarreling with. Yes, we were in a town hall meeting sometime last year. I think Barrister will still remember that. And I heard a traditional ruler say that part of ways a man could correct his wife is to hit the wife. That's a kind of correction. And this is a traditional ruler. Make no mistakes about that. I'm sure.
So how would the wife correct the man, really?
Good question. There's one question, yes. There's this other question that kept, ringing a bell in my head when he finished. Of course, there were some reactions, among the audience that showed that what he said didn't sit well with a good number of people. But one question kept ringing a bell in my head. This is a traditional leader, head of the traditional institution, and who is superintending over the affairs of a community. If a woman should walk into the palace of this traditional ruler to say, my husband abuses me, he hits me on a daily, and oh look, I can't take it anymore, I've come to you to complain. How is he going to adjudicate on that case? If he has that mindset that it isn't even wrong in the first place. So I did an article after that, that town hall we had. And in that article, I was saying that, look, the devil is in the details. The problem is deeper than we think, because like I said a moment ago, when people who are supposed to be in the vanguard, who are supposed to lead the charge, are not even seeing any problem, we have a problem. We have a problem there. So the problem is deeper than we think. It's a cultural thing, and that's what makes it difficult.
So it's deeper than the deep blue sea.
Yes.
Say, Barrister Nenozie, when we talk about the traditional Igbo society, we're always talking about perceptions, and we'd like to know how issues of sexual abuse or coercion are viewed in traditional Igbo society and communities. Just like Father Achi has mentioned, if a traditional ruler believes that the only way to correct someone's wife is to probably slap the woman, how do you think they will view a larger problem if something has been identified as a problem? Do you think that people who want to get some kind of justice if they have been maltreated or abused, do you think they will get it?
All right, thank you so much. You see, this issue of sexual and gender-based violence is entrenched in our traditional settings, in our traditional institutions. And that is because, just like Reverend said, they don't see anything wrong with it. In Igbo, they will say, why you are bought with money. So once a man marries you, you have no rights over your body, you have no rights over your will, you have no rights over anything. You have even seen, and it started from the home. You see your parents trying to raise you in a way that you are raised for the man. Yeah. You are told to be a good woman for your husband. Nobody tells the man, be a good man for the wife. And just like you said, you asked Reverend when he was, can the woman also beat the man as a way of correction? If you dare try it in the traditional setting, you go back to your father's house. If you ever try to resist the man from having his way as your husband, no matter how he wants it, like when we are talking about spousal rape, for instance, or intimate partner violence, where domestic violence is involved, women are always the victim. They are always the ones to be blamed. So this issue of victim blame is more entrenched in the traditional setting. They will first of all ask you, too much? Do you talk too much to your husband? Did you deny him access to your body? I mean, even if he comes home drunk and he wants you that time, you must give in. You don't have rights to say no. So these issues keep, and that is because the patriarchal society we belong in do not give women, does not even see women. Women can only be seen, but they can't be heard. So these issues continues. And look at where women are even mutilated. Female genital mutilation, for instance. It's a tradition that many people celebrate. They even do oriri, as in they will call for celebration that a young girl is to be mutilated or to be circumcised in the popular palace. So, which is wrong, because you are trying to limit the sexual satisfaction of that young girl. It is not so with the men. Then some of the girls in a family of two, man and a boy and a girl, the boy is asked to go to school because the girl child will soon marry. And some of them are even married off at a very young age. And that they say that is our tradition. When I was in the secondary school, my school daughter then, a very small girl, was already betrothed to someone. During holidays, she would go and visit the man. What did she know about marriage? But that was the culture of those people. So some of these abuses and violence are perpetrated by culture and tradition. And that is what we are trying to look into. I thank God that a lot of laws, a lot of policies, and a lot of court decisions are coming up to interrogate these traditional norms and cultures.
Good. Now that you've mentioned this, let me just ask you an additional question: whether sex without consent, even in marriage, considered an act of violence against women? Because you've touched on it, and because you're also a legal practitioner.
Yes, is an act of violence when you are demanding sex from the wife, and the wife says, oh, maybe for ill health or for whatever reason, maybe because you have even finished beating him. Someone came to the office and complained that my husband practically rapes me all the time. I said, how do you mean? He said, you just come, NK, come in. Immediately she comes in, the man will jam the door, push her to the bed, and that is it, has his way. That is violence. Even though you can't find a law that criminalizes spousal rape, because it's assumed that when you get married, you consent to sex. But violence is involved because that time, because the woman is not consenting, you hit her, you push her to, that is violence against her. Both emotionally, like my brother said, you speak words, you behave in a way, harassing the person, intimidating the person. And some women are dying in silence. They can't even come out to say it because it's like a shameful thing for you to say, oh, my husband raped me, or my husband always forces me to bed. People will laugh at us. When you wait, lawyer, don't you know that is what you'll be getting? But that shouldn't be. You see some callers, we've been on radio and some of the radio programs, and you see some callers saying, how can women are not properties, you don't buy them. Marriage it should be a mutual relationship, mutual respect. And that is why in defining sexual and gender-based violence, we say it could take the form of emotional abuse, psychological abuse. It could take the, so you don't have to even beat somebody. I don't want you to visit your family again. I don't want any friends to come to you again. I don't want you to have, these are cases we handle.
Welcome back to the Eastern Eye, and apologies for the mix-ups you will have noticed in the last few seconds. And we're still here. The Eastern Eye is a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. My name is Alex Ogbodo, and I still have you in the studio, Reverend Father Benjamin Achi and Barrister Nenna Anozie. Let me come to you, Father Achi. So we are still a bit historical and cultural. When we look back in our society, do you think there are precedents in Igbo tradition that address or condemn sexual abuse within marriage? Do you think that our society is very, very loud in saying, okay, this is wrong, don't do this, with all the examples we've given?
Well, yes, cultural. I think there have been attempts in the past, from what I've heard from the older people, about that efforts being made in the past to curb the excesses, of men, especially against the women. Just like Barasanos just said, these things can go either way. But we know women are always more at the receiving end, most of the times. Yes, I've heard that in the past, that there's this kind of laws in some Igbo communities where if a man is getting so violent against his wife and all that, some young people could be arranged to go and discipline the man for doing that. Exactly. You don't do this. You don't abuse your wife. She comes crying to us all the time. She comes complaining about the way you treat her so badly and all that. No, we can't take it anymore. Before that, there will be some warning. We've received these complaints repeatedly, and if you do that again, this is what is going to happen. And if the person crosses the line, the person receives the treatment. So I've heard of things like that. In fact, as a matter of fact, Alex, I keep wondering, because I don't hear of such things anymore. I think our forebears, had some ways of covering these things in the past. But these days, you don't hear of such things anymore. So it seems like culture contact and all of those have neutralized most of these core traditional Igbo values, where people are told, look, this is the red line, and you don't have to cross it. And if you cross it, there will be consequences, to that. But these days, this whole thing seems to have been so watered down, so bastardized, and people just get up and do whatever they like, and they walk the street free afterwards. So I think we need to go back to some of those core traditional values. I know there were things like that, like the example I gave. There could be more of such examples, but I know that there were efforts being made to see that justice is done.
All right.
But these days, we don't find that anymore.
Okay, Barrister Anozie, there are instances where a man would hold financial resources from the woman in order to get her to be submissive. How do you categorize this? Where among the SGBV categories will you place that?
Yes, when I was defining it, I said it could be economic abuse or violence. So when you deny a woman access to, it could even be economic trees that she's supposed to have access to, could be inheritance. Because you see, in Igbo culture, they believe that women should not inherit from the man, especially if you don't have a male child or male children. So if you withhold your money from your wife, that just to get her to be submissive to you, that is an abuse. You shouldn't do that. It's part of what the law captures. In fact, as a matter of fact, in Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law of Enugu State, that was enacted here in 2019 and domesticated. Of course, before it was a national law, national act in 2015. But so many states, and all the states in the Southeast, domesticated this law.
But
The VAT law.
are they implementing it? I know about the VAT
Yes,
law.
yes. Some states are implementing it, and we have been pushing, and there's been so much advocacy on the quick implementation. I know of Anambra, just last month we were in Anambra, where we had trainings with the police officers, still on this issue of gender-based violence, how to handle it, and not all this victim blaming and all of that. And that law, that VAP law, expanded the scope of rape, for instance, where you can now prove rape even without the actual penetration like what we had in the criminal code. So all these laws are part of what we are trying to let people know, that you can't. So economic violence is part of it. Even abandoning your spouse without any sustenance, without any leaving anything behind to sustain those who are dependent on you, is part of what the law sees as an offense, as violence. So you can't wake up one morning and just say, I don't want to marry these people again. I don't want to marry this woman. I'm not your children. You are not my children. You move and go without keeping something that they will use to sustain themselves. That woman will take it up. The law is against you. So these things constitute violence, economic violence, where you deny a woman access to inheritance. I thank God for the case of Ukeje and Okeje that the Supreme Court handled, where the woman was given right to inheritance. The brothers went ahead and shared their father's property without regard to the woman, and the lady went to court, challenged it to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave her justice. So people need to know all of these things so that they will stop dying in silence. The law is for you. Now, NGOs, civil society organizations are for you. And what man has taken a whole 1 year to be talking about issues of sexual and gender-based and amplifying the voices of as many that are speaking in this regard. So, we are not relenting until we see a society where there's freedom from any kind of violence, be it physical, emotional, economic, be it any form of violence. Even some people go as far as stalking people online, stalking people phone, and all of these things are part of what is contained, especially in this new law that we are using in Enugu State now, and some of the states, and all the states in the southeast, and almost all the states in the federation. Yeah. The last time I checked, I think it was just one state, one of the northern states or so, that was remaining in domesticating that law, because it is all encompassing. It brought about all of this violence, and just even some of them attempts to rape, all of those things, attempts to do this, female genital mutilation, attempts to assisting, aiding and abetting, all of these things are captured in that law. And so if you violate it, the law is against you.
All right. Thank you so much for laying that out. Father Benjamin, I'm sure you will have heard that. The issue of inheritance is a very, very key aspect now. In fact, it's now brought to the front burner that female children are also your children. So whatever it is that's happening culturally, you have to also pay attention that the matter can also get to the Supreme Court. Yes. But I'm also aware that even some families now distribute their inheritance without any discrimination. But there are communities that still don't agree. There was an instance where the children bundled their father and took him to the psychiatric hospital to find out whether he had gone insane for assigning some portion of his land to the girl children. So, if they can go this far, if the male children can go this far, what will be happening in some corners of that community where a girl or girls are supposed to be entitled to the inheritance from their father's estate, as it were?
Actually, it's an issue, a very serious issue when it comes to inheritance, exactly. That's where you see this gender discrimination coming out quite clearly. And like we said a moment ago, it is just one area that majority of the people do not even see anything wrong in. These are all your children. You give birth to all of them. And they should have right to what you own if they are really your children. I think what needs to be done, especially in that area, that's where the traditional leaders come in. She's just talking about the domestication of the law made by the state. Respective Igbo communities can also come up with a kind of law like that. They need to dialogue, sit at a round table and say, look, this thing has been there for a very long time, but is it right? But the problem we have most often is that some people don't even think that some cultural norms should be interrogated. That is the problem. They believe, oh, this is the way it has been. That is not the issue. It has been that way, but is it correct? So you can sometimes sit at a round table. You are human beings that God has given brain, given intellect. I mean, you can sit down and say, yes, this thing has been there from time immemorial, but I mean, it can be changed. This is not the right thing to do. And just like you rightly said, the fact that some communities have been able to, make a paradigm shift from that status quo, I mean, should be an encouragement to others who haven't done that to consider that, because female children are also children. Nobody questions that. So yeah, I think it's something that traditional leaders, at that level should think about. And given the fact that some people have actually tried it and they haven't all died because they did that, it should be a source of encouragement to them. Yes, to also try that as well, because it's a demand of justice. The demand of justice. The male child is as good as the female child.
Now we'll continue to ask these questions, but do we have in our culture and even in folktale, proverbs, and teachings that advocate for the protection of women's rights in marriage? Do you know whether any of it exists, Barrister?
Is it in the traditional
setting? Traditional setting?
Yeah, it's just like what he said earlier when you asked whether in the time past there used to be such. Yeah, we used to have the Umadas, the Igwes, the cabinet members. They used to really come into family affairs. Anything happening in the family, you can just go to the Igwes. Even up to now, I still refer people to the traditional rulers because I believe that they can still do something. You understand? And that is why we have been training some of them to understand this aspect we are talking about. Some of those things they took for granted before, that they say it's family. Even the police, that when you come some of those days, they will say it's family affairs. So it's no longer family affairs. Everybody needs to know about sexual and gender-based violence, what it connotes, how it affects everybody. So it is when they know, they will now know what to do. You understand? When they know and understand that this is violence against a woman, when it comes to marriage, they believe, in the Igbo tradition, they believe that once you're married, it's now you and your husband and your children. No, the society is involved. Because if you raise children from an abusive marriage, the society will suffer. The church will suffer. The traditional institution will suffer because, anything can happen. The person that is an abuser can abuse your own children. So you see that nobody will even sit on the fence. And that is why I keep encouraging the leaders of faith and culture. Bring yourself into that is not happening to you. And you are just pushing your face away from it. It could happen to your daughter. It could happen to your sister. Begin to talk about it. Issues of inheritance, for instance, started even from the Bible when Moses was sharing properties. The daughters of Zelophehad said, no, you will give us our father's inheritance. Because he didn't have a male child, they didn't make him less of a man. So, and when Moses went to God, God gave an answer, said, please give them their inheritance. And they got it. So if religious leaders will begin to teach these things in the church, traditional rulers too, we remember that there were times where women had obaji, bands of yam, as attached to them so that they can take care. Even if you don't have male children, they still have people they will gather and say, see this family, make sure they have everything they need. I don't know Igbo culture to be so, violent or to be abusive to women's rights. It's just that when people have misconception of this or maybe for selfishness, you see them doing certain things, but these things have to come to their knowledge that it is no longer acceptable. The law condemns it, and it is not helping us at all. Everybody must come together and agree, because that is the root cause. When we don't have this understanding from the family, from the tradition, these norms will continue. Even the issues of assigning roles to people because of their gender roles, because you're a wife. Maybe you come and report that your husband beat you because you did not cook. You did not cook food for your husband. And meanwhile, you went to work and your husband was at home. Do you get it? But because the society and the tradition has assigned the role of cooking to you, Therefore, you must cook, whether you know how to do it or not, whether you have the strength to do it or not, whether you have the time to do it or not. These are the root causes of gender-based violence. When you assign roles, when you trivialize issues of abuse, even such as that verbal abuse or intimate partner abuse, you say, no, dear Kobu, we can do to you anything. If we don't bring these things to their knowledge, that it is wrong. If a man can cook, we have good men who are chefs, we have good women who can cook, we have some women who can on generator, do bigger things that men do also. So whatever anybody can do, just like even in the issue of leadership, for instance, you see how it's playing out in our society, where men take all the leadership positions and give, allow women play the second fiddle. These things are social norms. They are social constructs that if we don't address, we just be combing sexual and gender-based violence. But we need to address these root causes.
That's right.
That are entrenched in patriarchy and, lack of awareness and,
Yeah, just something that dropped into my mind. Father Benjamin, actually, many years ago when I was very, very young on the job at that time, I had a radio program called Boy Zone. So on a particular day, I discussed the issue of meat, consumption of meat in the household, and how the men in the house would consume more than 80% of the meat in the house, forgetting that actually it's the children that actually need the meat to grow.
Yeah.
So, some men called into the program to say that they didn't quite know that what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
You eat almost the whole meat, and then your children.
And the choicest part.
The choicest part. So,
and it's the one
do you think that there could just be an issue of ignorance here, that information is not available enough?
Yes. Yes. I will answer in the affirmative, Alex. Yes. I think ignorance has very serious role to play in this, honestly, because, like I said moments ago, you ask many people why they do what they do, they tell you this is the way it has been. So this person has never even had time to sit back and reflect, like, okay, it has been this way, but is it actually the right thing to do? Does it actually make sense? It is a man who has sat down to interrogate this culture of him consuming the greater percentage of the meat. It's a man who has sat down to say, but the young children growing up need protein more than myself. I think I should give them more of the meat. It is only someone who has sat back to reflect and come up with that conclusion that will say, no, I can't be consuming the greater percentage of the meat when my younger children, are there who need protein, who need this meat more to grow. That's it. So I think ignorance has something to do with that. Yes. Yeah. Or even some tradition. Okay, the other time we were together during the town hall meeting, I remember an Igwe who said he's giving 50% of the slots in his cabinet to women. I was pleasantly surprised to hear that. I know some traditional rulers may want to do that, but they haven't even known it's possible. So I was quite impressed to hear a traditional ruler stand in front of the rest of his colleagues to say, yes, this is doable, this is possible. I've done that in my community and it's working out fine. Women have equal representation with men in my cabinet. I was pleasantly surprised. And I'm sure there are some of the, traditional leaders there who never even knew it was possible. Yes. Of course, I know there are people who say, I will never do that because this has not been the tradition. It has always been all men. The Igbo before me did that, so why will I go against that? But people who interrogate issues, who sit back to reflect on things, can actually say, look, we can change the status quo. This thing cannot continue this way. So ignorance has such a great role to play here, and that is why I am particularly impressed we are having this conversation.
Okay, now that ignorance is part of the problem, so how do we amplify awareness? Barrister Nena.
Yeah, that is what we are doing. We are on TV telling people. Even earlier in the morning today, we were in one of the radio stations in Enugu trying to speak on this. And, there's a lot of sensitization going on, town hall meetings, advocacy visits. Even, like I told you, we had a training of police officers. We've had trainings of lawyers on these issues because everybody needs to come into it and understand what it entails. That is no longer business as usual. It's no longer when a case of rape is brought to you and they're asking, was there penetration? No. VAP now says even if you use any objects, it doesn't have to be the man, you just, any objects you have penetrated. It could even be the mouth. Through the mouth, it could be through the, anus and all of that. You have penetrated, you have committed rape. So if people don't know, for instance, maybe a police officer doesn't know, or any law enforcement officer doesn't know, you still be talking about the old way of their penetration. So there's need for massive sensitization of especially this law, this VAP law that talks more on this violence. It addressed it. It took a lot of states time before they could domesticate it because they had to look at it again and again and again. It was as if the law was protecting only the women, but it is protecting everybody. It is called Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law. So anybody can approach the court if you are violated under that law. So there's need for constant engagement with the religious, because these are people who are the custodians of this culture, where you see people, even the religious leaders like my brother, you come to church and they are telling you, God does not encourage divorce. You cannot divorce your husband. And the woman will stay in that marriage and die. We've had cases. One of our sisters, last 2 years or so, Osinachi, may God rest her soul, died. It was when she died, a lot of people said, hey, my husband used to beat me. You will go to pastor will say, God said, let's keep praying, let's keep believing. We are not saying that we're encouraging divorce in any way, but you can leave that place of abuse so that you get yourself. You don't remain there. So there's need to engage the religious leaders, traditional rulers, the general public on this issue. Don't condone any form of violence against you. Leave the place of abuse so that you will be alive to tell the story. You have the law that is protecting you. You have NGOs, you have agencies that you can run to that will help you to ensure that you get justice. So don't die in silence. This culture of silence is dealing with people. Either you are ashamed because you are raped. No. In Enugu State, for instance, we have Tamasak, the Sexual and Assault Referral Center, where people can go and report issues of sexual abuse, and you'll be taken care of. There you will get access to the police, you get access to doctors, and all of that. They will look into your matter. So you don't need to die in silence. So we need to sensitize people. And that is why we are always on air. We are always on air. Tomorrow we'll be on air. We keep saying it. We keep any opportunity we have to enlighten the people. We do that so that people will know ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
That's right.
Yeah.
And on that note, I have to thank both of you so much for coming on the program tonight. Barrister Nenna is a legal practitioner and gender rights advocate. I think you can hear that from every sentence. She is the coordinator of Wabma Media Development Foundation for Community Mobilization. Thank you for coming on the program. And Reverend Father Benjamin Achi, Director of Media and Communications, Godfrey Okoye University. He's also the station manager, Go Uni Radio 106.9 FM, the heartbeat of dialogue. Only both of us know why I'm adding the heartbeat of dialogue.
That's
All right. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the program tonight on the Eastern Eye. And that's the Eastern Eye for tonight. We'll be here tomorrow same time. And up next is Nka with Jumai Bula Masheba. Remember, tomorrow is Armed Forces Remembrance Day. We'll have a special edition of the AM show. You'll be joining us at 8 a.m. for our special coverage of that event and more. And Afia TV will also be rolling a special documentary on the issues of the Civil War. You want to watch that from 1 p.m. tomorrow. Please stay with us. My name is Alex Ogbodo. Good night.